In this city and on these streets is no time for love. There is only odio.
Hatred.
Hatred. And it is hatred has killed my son.
After the disappointment of John Frankenheimer's first feature film, The Young Stranger from 1956, John returned back to television where he flourished. Being back on the Playhouse 90 program was a familiar and comfortable place for John. This is Eric Clapp with Cinema Force, and let's take a look at John Frankenheimer's second film as a director, The Young Savages from 1961. John knew that as the 60s were approaching, live television dramas were nearing their end, as were their captains. But television directors were not seen in the same class as motion picture directors. TV directors did things fast and cheap, and mostly in a controlled studio environment. Motion picture directors, on the other hand, were out on location and building grand dynamic sets with big movie stars. After co-writing the script for Breakfast at Tiffany's, he was dismissed as director of the film by star Audrey Hepburn because he was a TV director. John needed to escape the ever-looming end of live TV drama, and found a lifeline in a novel entitled A Matter of Conviction, written by Evan Hunter, inspired by the real-life case of Salvador Agron. Salvador, known as the Cape Man, was a Puerto Rican gang member who killed 2 teenagers in Hell's Kitchen in 1959. The script was bad in his opinion, but had Burt Lancaster attached to star and produce. As with Breakfast at Tiffany's, Frankenheimer and J.P. Miller rewrote the script that took place in parts of New York that John was very familiar with from his time living there. This time, John set out to make this film his own, whereas with The Young Stranger, John was having to work with a crew given to him. Here, John chose his crew, and you can say the Frankenheimer look started to take shape in this picture and set the tone for his future filmography.
What do you do for a living?
I am a hooker.
You mean you're a prostitute?
Yes.
When did you become a prostitute?
I was 14.
The film's story concerns a conflict between Puerto Rican and Italian gangs in the tenement sections of New York. After a visibly stylistic opening credit scene, we witness an Italian gang called the Thunderbirds stabbing a blind Puerto Rican boy from an opposing gang called the Horsemen in broad daylight. The Italian teens are apprehended, and the local district attorney Cole, played by Edward Andrews, sees this case as a propellant for him to be elected mayor.
I've got a hunch the papers are going to play this like the Chicago fire. You think we should try for first-degree murder? It looks like it to me.
Cole turns to his assistant, Hank Bell, played by Burt Lancaster, to throw the proverbial book at the teens, securing Cole a surefire win for mayor.
He must have been pretty good with a knife.
It's crazy.
In fact, he must have been better with a knife than anybody in the whole world. Because Roberto Escalante was blind.
Hank, who himself grew up in the same conditions as these youths, surprisingly has very little compassion at first for these young men.
I'm tired of having to coddle these punks because they're 15 instead of 16. You don't have to tell me about these kids. I was born in this neighborhood. I went to school with some of the worst gunsels in town.
Good swift kick with the more to straighten out these punks than anything.
Gunnison, we're not out to kick kids this time. We're out for first-degree murder.
Hank has even distanced himself from his past by marrying a rich socialite played by Dina Merrill. Hank has done all he can to forget where he came from.
Well, you came from that neighborhood yourself.
Yes, and I got out.
Yes, you did. But everybody hasn't got the emotional equipment to put up with the slums and the poverty.
Here we go with the Bassett theories of social oppression. Listen, Karen. Those punks have made Harlem a nightmare. People are afraid to walk home from the subway after dark.
Hank has done a lot to forget where he came from, but the case suddenly forces him to look in the mirror. Adding to his conflict is one of the youngsters arrested is the son of a woman he dated, Mary, played by Shelley Winters.
You're gonna kill my kid? You're gonna put his eyes out and come at him with knives in the darkness? You're gonna kill him like an animal, huh?
As the plot unfolds in a somewhat relaxed procedural pace, Hank Bell is forced to look inside his past and the conditions that these kids are living in. The stabbing itself is not as clear-cut as that opening scene may have shown. A brilliant note by Frankenheimer in that even he is an untrusty narrator in his own film. This film does have some interesting parallels with his previous film, The Young Stranger, in that again we're dealing with a fractured youth movement, or at least an adult's outrage of the youth movement itself and their hidden agenda to squash it. The key element here is how John Frankenheimer's Playhouse 90 experience lends itself to handling the delicate subject matter. Instead of stock stereotypes, Frankenheimer is able to use Hank Bell's character to inform the audience that delinquency often has more to do with social conditions than just a bunch of bad dudes.
Roberto was killed in cold blood by 3 guys who hit him because he had a darker skin. Reardon came in like those Japs during the war, kamikaze, ready to stick someone Spanish on home ground. He found Roberto and killed him. Now the law says that you die for that, Mr. Bell. And it's your job to see that those 3 guys die for it.
Hank knows where the evil comes from, but he has been reconditioned through fear of becoming evil himself. Even Hank's wife tries to appeal to his more compassionate side, but he just dismisses his wife's social justice concerns with the case.
You don't think I condone that kind of violence, do you?
I've gone 100 miles out of my way to find out what makes these monsters tick. I've been to Harlem time and again, to their homes. They spit in my face. What more can anyone do? What would you do?
I don't know.
Don't you?
All right, I made a mistake.
Was it a mistake? Don't you believe what you said?
Burt Lancaster here turns in a terrific performance as a man who has fought really hard to forget the past. The case reminds him of who he was and who he is as a man, despite its repercussions for the district attorney's mayoral campaign. Lancaster also has an absolute killer final line of dialogue.
And what about my son? Is this your justice for a dead blind boy? What about the animals who killed my son?
A lot of people kill your son, Mrs. Escalante.
This leaves the film on a bit of an ambiguous note, something not seen much in modern cinema at the time. This is also the first screen appearance by actor Telly Savalas, who puts in a somewhat creepy performance as a cop assigned to keep an eye on Hank as he investigates the case.
That's the difference between the police department and the DA's office. You boys protect your pretty faces. Our boys protect their kidneys.
It's a fun performance, and Savalas is a great contrast with Lancaster's straight-laced style. In a bit of crime-fighting foreshadowing, it bears mentioning that one of the teens on trial refers to himself as the Batman, a reference to the real case of the Cape Man. There is also Luis Arroyo's portrayal of Zorro, a member of the Horseman gang who confides in Hank. Interesting to note that Zorro was one of the inspiration for Bill Finger and Bob Kane's Batman character. Dissatisfied with the crew assigned to him on The Young Stranger, here John was able to bring in some of his TV associates. But instead of being trapped in a studio setting, they were able to shoot on actual locations. Locations that John knew all too well from his time living there in New York. Lionel Linden's harsh, contrasty cinematography complement the atmosphere John was looking for. The compositions start to resemble the classic Frankenheimer ones we would come to love so much. Lyndon and Frankenheimer's collaboration continued in 1962 by filming the films All Fall Down and The Manchurian Candidate back to back, with Candidate clearly cementing his framing style into something still being emulated by cinematographers today. The title, The Young Savages, suggests that it might be a follow-up to The Young Stranger, but it's just purely a coincidence. The producers changed the name from the book's title of A Matter of Conviction, thinking it was not flashy enough for a box office hit. Although Frankenheimer hated the title as it linked him to his failed first movie, he let that one go. Frankenheimer knew when to pick his battles now, and at least on this one he got to pick his own collaborators and show his skills as a storyteller navigating a politically sensitive subject matter. That was a win in his book.
Doctor, how can you say what was definitely in the mind of Anthony Aposto when and if he stabbed another boy?
So far, science has found no means of determining what definitely goes on in the mind of a man.
The film transcends the typical courtroom conclusion by instead putting not just the kids on trial, but society for its own delinquency in recognizing the cause in the first place. With a major star like Lancaster in tow, Hollywood now saw John as a new voice on the scene. Lancaster and Frankenheimer's next film would further reinforce that notion with Birdman from Alcatraz.
He is unbeaten, unbowed, unconquered. They call him the Birdman, and he is the most defiant man alive.
The combative pair would collaborate on 5 films together, including 7 Days in May, The Train, and The Gypsy Moths. The Young Savages is a really good film. It's not your typical courtroom drama, and it also lays the groundwork for John's films in the future. You could almost consider The Young Savages as a teaser trailer for Frankenheimer's entire career.